Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Brooke Brigham, I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham, I'm the therapist.
And today we are joined by our friend, Dr. Ashley Scolaro. She is a doctor of cognitive neuroscience, and she's been with us before to tackle some of these big issues, big trials, cases, and today we're going to be talking about the fallout of the Sean Combs trial. If you've been living under a rock, I mean, just to catch you up, last week the jury returned a verdict where they convicted him of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. One for his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, and one for another ex-girlfriend who is going by the pseudonym Jane. But they acquitted him on the more serious counts of sex trafficking and RICO conspiracy or racketeering, as some people refer to it. And he is still in custody. He was denied bail pending sentencing.
That was the one upshot. That was the one good part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, God, I guess at this point it's good they got any convictions, from some of the stuff we've been hearing. But so today they had a hearing and they decided that the judge decided he would stay in custody until October 3rd when there's going to be a sentencing hearing. And at first the defense wanted it to happen right away, but I think they realized it would be better for them to have more time to gather more information and present a better case for the sentencing. And the word on the street is that the defense is hoping that he will be sentenced to somewhere between 21 and 27 months, so roughly 2 years. He'll get credit for time served. He's already been by the time this hearing happens, he will have been in custody for about a year. So he would only do another year or so. The prosecution is looking at more like 51 to 63 months, which is 4 to 5 years. So I think everyone agrees he's not going to get the maximum. Potentially he could get up to 20 years, but he has no prior record. He has officially he's never been convicted of any other crimes. He's been involved in some shady things, but has always kind of skated away. And I've seen videos online of federal attorneys and prosecutors talking about how technically he could get time served.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. That one of the reasons why I said, I'll stay till October is like, I'm probably going to have to do this time anyway. Yeah. Why leave and have to come back? I mean, I wouldn't want to leave and come back.
No.
I'd be like, yeah, I'll do everything now.
Yeah, because under the sentencing guidelines, and these sentencing guidelines are very complex. There's all kinds of different rules that apply to them. But I've seen some people say that technically he qualifies for time served or, maybe a couple more months beyond October. So, he is going to be being released fairly soon. And there's a lot of strong feelings about this case. And just reflecting on it over the last week, I think that, especially as women, these cases come along and we think that, okay, this is going to be the case. Like, this is going to be the case that is so big and so, it's just so forceful that it's going to change things. It's going to make things better for women. It's going to mean that women will be protected or believed or something. I don't even know what. I don't even know what we think. But I personally, whether it's this case or like the Harvey Weinstein case or any of these big cases, and we're in the Me Too era, which we're clearly now in the backlash part of the Me Too era, which always happens. But yeah, we get so attached to these cases and we think that they're going to do so much for our cause. And then we're so crushed when it just doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I've been feeling. And I feel like I've had blinders on myself. And now that I take the blinders off and I really look at the case and I see what the jurors are saying and look more logically at it. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of being a Pollyanna, honestly.
Yeah, me too. I always have such high hopes for these cases, and I think, Ashley, you were pointing out before we started that because we couldn't watch the trial, unlike the Karen Reed trial, we couldn't watch this. It is really hard to kind of know, like, what did the jury see? What was, they report back some of these things that are happening, but it is hard to know. And I watched one of the alternate jurors on, can't remember if it was
CNN, maybe
CNN. And he basically said, yeah, based on everything that I saw, I would vote the exact same way. And he claimed that those videos were tame. I was like, oh. He said it's just a lot of rubbing oil on each other.
Yeah, I was surprised by that because I think, and that was one of the closing arguments that Mark Agnifilo made, was that they are trying to make this case about baby oil to, because you just say baby oil and you say gallons of baby oil and people's imagination goes crazy, right? And so then everyone thinks that, and I thought this, when this first came out, I thought that these were like orgies with like tons of people. And because it wasn't until the trial started that I was like, wait a minute, this is just the two, he and his girlfriend, and they hire this sex worker, who the sex workers are not saying that they were coerced. They did this voluntarily, like it was their choice. They were paid. They made it sound so bad, or they put this image, the baby oil image, just made everyone's imaginations go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, hearing about his white parties are very different from these freak offs, what they're calling them, which I'd asked my 14-year-old son, had mock trial last week. And one of the things they asked him was, are they watching any cases? And everybody except him said Diddy, and he had Karen Reed and Lori Vallow, because apparently he's I'm paying attention to higher caliber. But he was just like, I can't believe he didn't get convicted. And I said, what's your understanding of what he was being charged with? And he said, of orgies. And I was like, okay, first, I know that you knew that word, so let's have a conversation about that, and what would be illegal about that. So I think that's also confusing, as where these things were happening. And when when we're seeing Cassie in that video getting dragged out of a room, that might not have been when one of these things were happening, but that's the situation she's in. It's her, it's this escort, it's him and his security detail, and that's it.
Well, I think we have a real problem in this country that we cannot understand coercive control.
Right.
Because I was reading something, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten the woman's name. She's a prominent feminist, and she was talking about, how it was too far. It was too hard for people to jump there. Like when you hear the word trafficking, what we think about is that a little kid in a basement, or a teenager in a basement.
Yeah.
When we think of racketeering, we think of shadowy crime families. And so to attach those things to him, and then to see Cassie, who's an adult woman who was free to go wherever she wanted to go, I think it's very hard for people to then wrap their brains around it. And that's the part that's very tricky, is that we as human beings, if something has not happened to us directly, or we have not experienced it, we don't believe it's real. We don't believe, we can't wrap our brains around it. And I think that many, many men don't get this coercive control, don't get any of this. And I think a lot of women do too. I think it's just this idea is just too hard. And I don't know if the laws need to be written differently. I don't know, but this is the part that they really missed. And maybe they needed to have more experts come in and really talk about like what it means to be in an abusive relationship, that maybe it was voluntary in the beginning, but then it stopped becoming voluntary. And this is what this looks like. But again, I think people just have a hard time if you've once said yes to something.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you're right, because it's very nuanced, because they showed text messages from Cassie where he says, "Oh, do you want to plan a freak off or have a freak off tonight?" And she says, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm always down for a freak off." Well, that's not a committed answer. That's something you say to sort of like move past that and go, you're not making any commitments. You're trying to move past that to get to the next thing, hoping he'll forget about that. But I think what the jurors heard and what a lot of people hear is, "Oh, that's consent."
Yeah.
Right.
No, it was not consent. It was like, I'm just saying this to just, it's a survival thing. Like, you're just trying to move the conversation forward without making a commitment. It's not like she said, "Oh yeah, let's do it tomorrow at 7. I'll call so-and-so." I mean, none of that. It was, so yeah, you're right. And I think both men and women don't understand coercive control. And, there's women who live coercive control and don't even know it, and has nothing to do with violence or anything. But so many women are dependent on men.
Yeah.
For their income, the security. And that's why a lot of women vote in certain ways, because it's going to benefit their husbands, their providers, and in turn it's going to benefit them. And they don't even know they're doing it. I think it's all kind of subconscious. It's just survival.
Yeah. No,
I mean, I think if we explaining it, not just with experts, the expert, they did have one come in, but I think the judge limited what they could testify about. So I don't know what all was able to get in from her, but she's from, I think, the Depp Heard trial, Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial from last summer, whenever that was. I think it's the same person. I think if we could get to where prosecutors could explain coercive control, or defense attorneys, they do a pretty good job explaining, indirect evidence. So, when they give the examples of you look outside and you don't see snow, you wake up in the morning, there's snow on the ground. You didn't see it snow, but you can guess that it snowed because of those two events.
Yeah, circumstantial events.
Right. Yeah. If we could have something like that for coercive control, I mean, and one of the things I try to link when students bring up these kind of questions, if we ever are talking about a crime that involves a cult or something, is if you think about the number of people that are stuck in a job they don't like, because it's not coercive control in the same way, but it's very similar to where I can't get another job. I'm tied to I'm not talking about me specifically, right? But I can't get another job because this is the training I have. This is the only place. In rural communities, we see this a lot. Like, where would I go? I don't have enough money. I couldn't sell my house if I wanted, right? Yeah. So, but it's different. But I don't know I think that could potentially help. It sounds like the person that went with the pseudonym Jane, from what I could tell from Cross, I don't think she was a very strong witness. I think they could destroy her. They did quite a bit on the defensive side because she did decline. They could show that she didn't say yes to every single escort. And while I don't think, it just takes saying not having consent one time, I think because they could get her to admit that you could say no to this person because she didn't like that person. I think that doesn't help. It's very frustrating. I don't know how you can look at the video. Well, I also don't know with the split verdict how we get the transportation piece, but we don't get the sex trafficking piece. And I know it's because we've got this misconception of what sex trafficking is, but that's very confusing because Diddy's defense seemed to be, he's a domestic abuser, but he's not being charged with domestic abuse. And it's like, well, okay, but that's kind of part of this trafficking piece, is having that abuse, like physical abuse there. So,
well, yeah, that's the difference between prostitution and trafficking, is consent. And but even on the prostitution, I'm kind of unclear. Are they talking about the prostitution of the male sex workers or the prostitution of Cassie? Because Cassie didn't get paid. you know what I mean? It was the male sex workers who were getting paid. So I would think that he was transporting them to engage in prostitution, not Cassie. Cassie's just his girlfriend who, you know, who wants to do this according to him. So that's even weirder because now we're getting these men involved who, you know, it's strange. Maybe that was I don't know, maybe that was what the jury had to do. You know, they had to, maybe, you know, it's this kind of a split verdict. It's like, well, we're not going to go with these. There probably were some people who were leaning towards the stronger verdicts, you know, the charges, and maybe this was a compromise because it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think another big part of this is, despite, you know, it being 2025, we still see men and women when it comes to sex very differently. And so it was Diddy Sean Combs, called him by his government. Combs was this rock star, and hey, he's a swinger and he likes to have, you know, he likes to do these things. But then it's like, we then look at, I mean, whether people are not going to admit this, but I think that people can really explain away Diddy and his behavior and, oh, hey, he's a swinger, you know, he's a partier and all this, versus Cassie. Someone, and I think that I do believe that people had a lot of judgment towards her, judgment for staying in this, judgment for all, you know, not getting out, you know, judgment of her doing these things sexually. You know, we still really have a problem in this country where we look at women who, you know, very differently than men when it comes to sex. And I think that that's the biggest thing between this and R. Kelly is that R. Kelly was minors, and we can, that we're so good about that. But again, Cassie was what, 19?
Yes, 19.
That's not too far off. And that's the problem. That's the problem, which is, if it was 2 years earlier, I think this would be totally different. But the problem is, and it's so silly. It's like, what, 18? You know, you suddenly have, you know, things are different. But I think that was the big difference, is that R. Kelly, they weren't going to let him get away with it. And this, they were like, they're adults, you know?
Right.
That was just my thought.
Yeah. And the financial piece of it too, you know, the financial dependence, you know, because, people keep saying, well, she was free to leave. She was free to leave. Well, I mean, we've talked about this. Was she free to leave? You know, where was she going to go? You know, she invested all this time and energy into this singing career. And, you know, that was her dream. It's just, again, if you take a step back and you look at the bigger picture, it's, you know, this is just one case. This is just one, you know, there's unfortunately a lot of men out there doing this who are wealthy, not wealthy, whatever. It's just very discouraging as a woman to think, God, like, when are we going to be able to have enough power and enough, I don't even know what the word is, you know, we're trying, we're trying to get there so that, you know, we're not susceptible to this.
But at the end of the day, I'm sorry, this isn't going to make me very popular, but at the end of the day, we'd rather elect a felon than elect a woman as as the president. I mean, that's really, truly where we're at.
That's how much we hate women. Like, that, you know,
or don't believe that we can lead, or don't believe that we're strong enough or tough guy enough to lead, which is so stupid.
I mean, we have bypassed a couple of, I mean, you know, I don't care what your political views are. You cannot deny the fact that two of the most qualified women in our country in terms of government and service, you know, it couldn't get elected president. I mean, what do you want from us?
Against someone who doesn't have those years of service. I mean, like, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about two highly qualified women for the job that if they were just going for an interview and we didn't know their genders or their names, you would automatically go with them. And so, but this guy's a reality star, so that'll work. And look how well it's going.
Yeah. I mean, I worked on Kamala Harris's campaign when she was here in Iowa. Not this most recent time, obviously, because that was so quick and there wasn't a primary. But before then, my 14-year-old got to interview her. Actually, they did this cute little series on YouTube. But point being, she came in with a million other things she had to do in that hour-long time she was interviewing these kids, or they were interviewing her. But she still sat down and spent about 5 minutes just talking to my son, who I think was 7 or 8 at the time, and talking to me. And before, I mean, she's super qualified, super nice person. I mean, I'm sure there's times where she's not a super nice person, but it is, the view of women is upsetting. I'd hoped, I think, that Cassie being so pregnant during the trial that might have backlashed on her as well. But I was hoping that would be a little bit of empathy.
Yeah, I thought it was going to give her a lot of empathy. I thought it would, but
let's stop and remember that women are at their highest likelihood of being murdered,
right,
when they're pregnant.
Yeah,
period. That's just a statistic. So, I don't think we give regard to that. I don't think we give regard to any of it, and that's what's so sad about it is, the thought that, women who are talented and intelligent and have everything going for them think that fall prey to this. We need to raise women who would look at someone like Sean Combs and be like, ugh, disgusting. I don't care how badly I want a record contract. I'll get it some other way. I'll get it by myself, or I won't. And that's another thing, in our culture, everyone wants to be famous, whether, even if it's just Instagram famous or famous, or be a star, run in these circles, do this, that. It's too much of our culture and our society is wrapped up in this lifestyle. These people.
I agree with you on that, but I will say that, I do think that, the desire and drive to be an actor, to be a singer, to get into these fields, to be able to do something that very few people are able to do. And if you grew up with this dream of singing on stage, and this is my dream, and this is the thing that's going to make me really happy. You develop this dream before your brain is fully formed. You get into this relationship before your brain is fully formed. And then what happens, I believe, is it becomes I have to stay in order to get my dream. And I really do. I mean, and I think Cassie had part of the process of her and where she's at in her life right now is basically saying, I'm never going to be a singer. That's not going to happen for me. But if you've spent a long time dreaming of this, wanting this, trying to get this thing, it is devastating when it doesn't work. And then if you feel like you've been doing all these things that maybe you don't really want to do, but you're justifying it, so now the justification is I have to be famous, in order to feel like this was all worth it. And that's Sean Combs knew exactly what he was doing. He did what Harvey Weinstein did. He did what Bill Cosby did, which is he dangled his power, dangled some kind of carrot of I could help you. God, Cosby did nothing. I mean, God, he dangled the carrot and then, and then drugged you. So it's unbelievable. It's truly, truly unbelievable that we continue to, these men continue to get away with it. As Cosby did too, because he's home now.
On a technicality. That just, that really gets me. But I do wonder, what if the outcome would be different if we had been able to watch this trial? If we had been able to, well, I guess the jury is the jury. It would help us understand, the jury's still going to see the same thing. Although, I don't know. Maybe a trial goes down differently if it's televised or not. I don't know if that helps the defendant or hurts the defendant.
Mm-hmm.
Not really sure. I guess it depends on the case.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the outcome would have been the same whether it was televised or not. I think, right, like if we really were able to see it with our eyes, maybe we would be less shocked. Though
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about this earlier, which is we covered the TMZ. What was it? It was like it was
Diddy's. It was like before the trial, they did a series of little 1 hour things, and it was called Diddy's defense, and it was anticipating what his defense was going to be, and they had this mock jury who also acquitted him.
And that's what we saw, and it was the same questions, the same issues, which was, it was very clear to that mock jury that like, oh, okay, yeah, this was a prostitute sex worker being brought from one state to another. That's very clear. But they could not wrap their brains around the racketeering, RICO stuff at all, because they were like, well, where's the money? Shouldn't there be money involved in this? Like, they couldn't figure that out at all. So when the verdict came down, I was like, oh yeah, it's exactly how TMZ predicted, because and that was always people's concern. And I think, Brooke, you were bringing up a good point earlier about how I think before we started recording, about how Sean Combs has been a bit of a nuisance for New York, and that maybe this is why there was such a prosecutorial overreach.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also, you got to think about it, like the women prosecutors, and I do think it was. Look, we've got Maureen Comey, we've got these women who are very serious, very smart. I think that they just overestimated their case, the way that a jury would receive it, because I don't disagree with what they were arguing in a lot of ways. Again, I wasn't able to, hear all the testimony, but they were making very nuanced arguments about, okay, well, what is a criminal enterprise? They were arguing that Bad Boy Records was a criminal enterprise because these assistants were forced to do whatever Diddy told them to do, or they were out.
Right.
And again, it's a big deal to be working for Sean Combs, and they were facilitating all of this. So they were really trying hard, but again, at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to the consent issue. They just didn't buy it. No matter what these employees were doing, even if it was a criminal enterprise, you still have to have a victim who's, being hurt by it. And if they don't believe that Cassie or Jane is being hurt by it, then it doesn't matter. These people could be all crooked. And, that alternate juror, he made a comment that, I don't think he didn't think a lot of those witnesses were very credible.
Meaning Cassie and Jane?
No, like Diddy's employees. And,
yeah, Capricorn story about being held at gunpoint and given lie detector tests. Her 2 kidnappings came up again in this. Didn't find her believable.
Yeah. And that woman, Dawn Richard, who was in Danity Kane, he mentioned her, that he didn't think she was credible. So, I think this is a case where these prosecutors were trying really hard intellectually to fit. Yes. It's almost like intellectually trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it just didn't work with the jury.
Yeah, because we've talked about this, and we talked about this on the podcast a lot. People do not do well with the shades of gray, of the subtleties, of the nuances. Anytime we've even talked about things that are very nuanced, we've gotten a lot of backlash about, because people sort of misunderstood what we were talking about. And I think that when it comes to trials and cases, especially when it comes to like locking someone up for the rest of their life, you know, I can understand a little bit, like, I need it to be black and white. You know, and if it's not all one this thing, I've got to go this other direction. And so anyway, and I just think that we, again, psychologically, I also think that there is something with separating ourselves. I think that especially maybe women want to feel like there was a choice so that they know, oh, that would never happen to me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because the thing is that truly, you know, coercive control is someone kind of coming in and slowly drip, 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 you know, slowly turning the dial and pushing and pushing and pushing and doing it until you're trapped. And I think that seems so out of control and so scary. And so a lot of times I think we want to just separate ourselves from it and be like, well, she had a choice. She had a choice. You know, someone can't coerce you to do anything. That could never happen to
that could never happen to me.
To me, that could never happen to an intelligent person. That could never oh, she must be shallow, right? Like all of these, you know, she could be someone who, yes, wants fame and wanted the money and wanted all of these things. Absolutely. And also slowly tick, tick, tick to the point where she just didn't know anymore. Or she couldn't get out. And we saw a video of it. We saw a video of her trying to leave. And we saw what happened to her. So that didn't seem like a choice.
No. It came up again at this trial when the jury says that they're hung up, and then they give them psychology, we've been calling it the dynamite charge, but I don't know if that's because different states have a different, if it's the Allen charge or what it's really called, where they have to send them back. I wonder, I mean, we probably would have had a mistrial on one of the counts. I don't know if they'd try him again if it would have been a mistrial. I suspect maybe they would have, but I really don't like when if a jury says we're deadlocked, I don't like that a judge can say, no, go back in there and talk more, because I think from the perspective of like the legal system side, I can understand why they've spent all this time in this trial and they want to make sure that jury's for sure deadlocked. But at the same time, like now you're kind of, anybody that had solid footing in an area could all of a sudden be coerced into changing their mind because, oh, well, the judge says we have to make an opinion. I've been here however many weeks I've been here for this trial. But it's odd that they were deadlocked like that, and then not very much longer before they had a verdict. So,
well, yeah, it was 1 hour into deliberating, and
when they sent that first note,
juror 25 is not following the instructions, and we don't know which way that juror 25 was leaning. We don't know if that was leaning one way or the other, but. Yeah.
I mean, it could have been something kind of random or petty. They were just being difficult about something. But yeah, and that's a big problem. The psychology of the like, I served on a jury for a month, and trust me, when you get that case, you want to get it over with and get out of there. And these jurors have been there. I think it was like a 7-week trial, and it's just human psychology. You know, there's a holiday weekend coming up.
Yes. They want to be out there for the fireworks.
Yeah. And the guy, there was a interview with someone who was actually on the jury, not the alternate guy, but another guy gave an interview where he was saying that he was getting backlash from people saying, like, yeah, you didn't, like, this was too fast. You didn't consider all the evidence, whatever. And he was really upset about it. And he's like, we deliberated for almost 2 days. And I'm just like, oh, wow. You know, 2 days for a 7-week trial where someone could possibly be going to prison for life. I mean, okay. Like, you know, was that really enough time? You know, how did things change so quickly and drastically?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a scary prospect. You know, this is how they do it. We don't know what they're doing back there.
Right, which is, psychologists always want to go figure out what people are doing when they don't think anybody's watching. But I think that's where going in and actually hearing what's happening would be valuable from psych research perspective, because the mock trial, I think I remember that the TMZ thing you're talking about could be confusing it with something else, but you never know what they're showing them. And it's never the same circumstance because it's not the actual trial. So regardless of what they say, like there's not the same consequences as if I'm actually on the jury and this person's actually found guilty and potentially sentenced to life. Those are a lot higher stakes than I'm on this mock thing. Even if I'm on television or I'm in a study, it's still not, it's not the same. Doesn't mean it's not valuable information we get from it. But I mean, the things that when we're trying to do research just on how to structure a jury to be equitable towards people is really hard to do when we don't have, and what we don't know what's actually going on and can't see what they're actually saying behind those closed doors. Because some people have argued we need 6 people, not 12 people. We need every state or jurisdiction or wherever needs to have that same rule. That I think in Massachusetts it must be a rule, or at least the judge there said don't start with a straw poll, because the research shows if you do that, people don't, they'll stay where they were before instead of deliberating. But we just don't know what they say back there. I would love to know more. I also totally understand the jurors not wanting to talk about what happened. So the ones that do, I'm always grateful that they do, because I can't imagine. A month is a long time, Brooke. How did you get on that? How'd you get on that jury too? I'm always like, I don't think I'll ever get on a jury, but.
Well, it happened to be that, both sides had used up all of their peremptory challenges. And so then I was the last person in the box, and, they asked me all the questions, can you be fair? And then what am I going to say? Of course, like, this is what I do for a living. I can't say, because people would get up there and say, I can't possibly be fair because of whatever. And they just make something up to get off the jury. But, I had to be honest, and there was no cause to get rid of me. So I got on, and so I was going to say, I went to a seminar many years ago where they showed a video. I think this happened, I want to say it was Arizona. I think it was like one of the only times they got permission in a trial to videotape jury deliberations. And I believe it was a criminal trial, and everybody consented. It was kind of in the vein of, research and trying to understand how juries work. And I remember it was really interesting, because there's always like one, maybe 2 people who come out of the gate being the strong ones, who have this very strong opinion. And that's why when you pick a jury, you have to think of the dynamic of the jury, because you could have all these great, reasonable people on paper, and then all it takes is one really strong personality to like get everyone, in their orbit. And there was this guy who just took over and started basically telling everybody why they should vote this way and what happened. And one thing that people do, and they did this in the jury that I served on, people constantly say, well, if that were me,
Right.
Well, when this happened to me,
yes,
they bring everything back to them.
Yes.
And they don't consider the circumstance that someone else is in, which explains all of the reasons why the nuances with sex and race and everything else kind of go by the wayside. Because what do you get? You get the consensus of a bunch of white people and a certain kind of white people, certain demographic of, age and education, whatever. And also remember, this jury was 8 men. The Sean Combs jury is 8 men. And I can just see these men just all hyped up after 7 weeks of all this stuff. And they come out and they have their opinion. And, maybe the guy who said, I can't, the one who was the subject of the note was maybe trying to push back. I don't know. And,
what
and
he
say,
was doing.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm not going to, and they blamed it on him, saying that he wasn't following the instructions. 'Cause it sounded like there was some drama back there about that.
And the thing is that bias, it's in every part of our world, of our lives. I mean, I've talked a lot about this, but I go in and I give talks all the time about the multi-generational workforce and about, right? Like, and it's again, there's all this, people have a hard time understanding, a 60-year-old has a hard time understanding a 22-year-old. Like, in my day, we worked hard. It's like,
Right.
in my day, I love baby boomers telling us, in my day, like I follow the rules. It's like, really? Did you? Come on. Your whole generation is about battling against everything. Shut up. I mean, but that's the problem. If it does not happen to us, if we can't see it, if we can't wrap our brains around it, and we know this too, because the more exposure we have to a particular culture, to a group of people, the more understanding we are about them, right? The more that we're open to things. And that's a big problem. We are self-involved creatures. We think about things through our own lens and how we want things to be. And I mean, I don't know. I'm constantly thinking about what is this case especially made me keep thinking, what is the solution? What do we need to do differently so that we can have a more effective way of deliberating? Because I do understand the concept of this idea of a group of your peers, right? Like a group of your peers versus one judge, one person who's had maybe a very different kind of life, right? Like, I don't know if I would want to put, I can understand not wanting to put your fate in one judge's hands, right? Versus 12 people that had different life experiences. But that's a big problem, is that it's a combination of so much of it is about the jury pool, right? Because there were 8 men on this jury, simply because my guess would be, right, because of who showed up, who was there.
I think the other thing too, in addition to the jury, is that this at least got my, I guess, hopes up. I don't know why, because it was not determined by a jury, but the fact that he wasn't let out on bail, I thought, okay, well, they've got to have something like that. Doesn't happen that often, that someone of his fame isn't granted bail, is very rare. So I thought, okay, there's got to be something going on, but maybe that shot them in the foot too, because maybe if he was out on bail, he wouldn't have waived his right to a speedy trial, and maybe they could have spent more time crafting whatever the argument was. I don't know what all has to happen.
It cuts both ways. Yeah. I mean, and that's what happens, OJ, these precious men, they don't want to be in jail. OJ wouldn't waive time. It's like, they don't want to waive time. If they're in custody, they want their trial as soon as possible. And, I don't know if more time, would that have made the case easier? Would it have made it worse? Because it's more time that it's out there and people are thinking about it and watching it. And it is. I heard
oh gosh,
the cat's trying to break out. Hold on a second.
I was like, what is that?
Yeah, it's trying to break out.
Dusty. I figured it was an animal,
Poor cat. It does not want to hear about Diddy anymore.
Yeah.
She's not that smart of a cat. She locked herself into this room, and then it's like, why won't it open? It's like, goes the other way.
Yeah.
Coercive control.
Yeah. of the door. Yeah.
Of the door.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
yeah,
so,
I was going to say, I heard someone talking about this thing with the bail, saying that, this is kind of rare and especially in a federal case like this, that, he's not a flight risk. No, he's not going to be able to leave the country and go, hi, you know what I mean? He's going to have to he can put up millions of dollars, take his passport, whatever. And the judge's excuse as to why he denied bail was because he admitted to being a violent person. He admitted to committing acts of violence against Cassie and others. And that's, I don't know. that was kind of part of his defense, sort of, I guess. Probably shouldn't be held against him. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he probably should be out on bail, but like you said, he's going to have to serve some time anyway. So what? Yeah, you're going to leave and get like used to regular life again?
Yeah, and then have to go back in? If it was me, I'd say I'd stay. Let me stay. You know? So I want to talk about this because this really just pissed me off. I understand why, but so Sean Diddy Combs was met with a standing ovation from his fellow inmates after hearing court verdict.
Well, that's understandable.
And so, yes, I do understand that, like, for the inmates, it's us versus them. Like, you beat the system, and I can also understand it. He's a black man. You beat the government, you know, all of that. But my God, I mean, at the same time, there's a little bit of this. You're clapping, but I think you all also know that he did all the, you know, that he did all these things that he was accused of. Like, you all know that he's a bad man. So
yeah, and
I know.
Except for our precious Luigi.
Luigi would not have.
No.
I don't think he would not clap.
Oh, I mean, it goes back to if Cassie would have been 2 years younger, this would be, I don't think, a standing ovation by the inmates. So he'd be in. I thought he already was in protective custody, but he must not have been, or maybe it was just at the jail. I don't know.
He's in the dorm there there's only like 40 people in there or something.
And that's the craziness of this, because if Cassie had been, 17, I don't know, if Cassie had been 15, trust me, he'd be dead.
But if she had stayed with him all this time and most of this behavior occurred after it, I think he'd get a pass. Mm-hmm. You know?
Meaning like if they hooked up when she was 14, 15 years old, but it's, you know...
But they stayed together for 10 years, so now she's, 25 or 26 or whatever.
But weren't some of the R. Kelly women that same situation?
They were definitely minors.
They were definitely minors, but didn't some of them stay?
Some of them stayed by their own. Well, they were kind of brainwashed by that point. They stayed, but even the oldest of the R. Kelly victims were, like 22 or, you know what I mean?
Okay, there was just two
very young.
There were current minors, I think.
Yeah,
right?
living in his home.
Okay, so like, yeah. So that's the big difference, is the difference between getting a standing ovation and getting, shanked. I don't know.
Yeah.
He claims people are trying to kill him, so he needs to be able to do the rest of his time in home confinement. Yeah.
Oh
God.
Yeah, I mean,
well, at least we know that Trump's not going to pardon Diddy. I mean, Combs, like,
he might. There's two charges. He might. Yeah, he might still.
You know what? I think if Diddy's family made this, organized effort to kiss Trump's ass, I think he would pardon him.
Oh, look at the Chrisleys. I mean, yeah.
All they had to do was they donated? I don't know, $1 million or something to some fundraiser. Doesn't take a lot to get.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Maybe that's why he needs the extra time until October.
Yeah, there you go. Get his pardon in place. Yeah,
maybe. This is what he's going to work on.
I would not be surprised. I mean, I would. That's totally feasible. That could totally be coming.
Yeah,
it's shocking.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Another fight.
Well, yeah, that we had that, and then we had Kohlberger pleading the same week. It was a very odd.
Yeah, we talked about that on our Patreon that came out yesterday. So if you're interested in that, head on over to Patreon.
Do you have any thoughts on Kohlberger you want to share?
Oh, I don't. I think everybody just wants to know why. I don't think we're going to know that, obviously. Even if we get facts of the case, like, we have to wait to see if something more comes out on them. I'm glad for the families and the surviving victims in that house that he's not going to be able to do appeals or anything. I think that is beneficial. But yeah, I was shocked, but not shocked that we had a change. It's just been a lot of cases all at the same time. I suppose there always are, but I'm just not always prepping a class like I am right now for the fall. So
that was, that was very disturbing, and you're right. I don't think we'll ever really know what happened, and some of the families are upset about that. They want to know, and sometimes they put stipulations on these plea deals where you have to give some details, but I think here I just think that the prosecutors and the community and everyone just didn't have the stomach for this. They just didn't want to have to go through it. It's too much.
Yeah.
He's gonna die in prison. So okay, what more do you want?
Yeah. Ugh. I know. It feels like it really does. You have Karen Reed, that feels like a few steps forward, and then this is a few steps back. It is. It's exactly what you're saying, Brooke, that that's how it's felt for a long time. Me Too felt like a lot of steps forward, and again, but again, we see these cycles. I mean, 2020 was all Black Lives Matter, and you know what I mean? It's just that now it's like, oh, let's cut all the DEI programs, right?
Well, I've lived long enough now to see this pattern, and I guess it'll just always be this way. There's a backlash to everything, and as much as we like to talk about, our values as this nation of immigrants, look at what we're doing to immigrants. It's all, it just makes no sense. It's maddening. We go through bad times, and then, then Barack Obama gets elected, and it's like, oh my God, we think everything's, this is the before times and then the after times.
Yes.
And we think it's going to be that way forever. And then no, we slide back, and it's just this constant, I guess we are making progress overall, in the big picture of it, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we are a more humane society. I think we are getting better. I think the problem is that it moves at a snail's pace, and we fight as much as we can against it. And the people that have the power are going to fight and fight and fight. And we, I think that we will continue to move forward, but again, it's just, but in our lifetimes, we might not see it, and I mean, listen, 100 years ago, the idea of electing a Black man as president seems insane.
Oh, I never thought I would see that.
Yeah, and here we are, and silly us, we thought we could go from a Black man to a woman.
Yeah.
That was just too much.
I don't know if we're going to see that in my life.
I don't know if we are. I think you're right. I don't know if I will see a woman in my lifetime. I don't know. But the hope and, the belief and the desire is maybe there'll be a woman in our children's lifetime. So.
Okay.
Anywho,
well,
God.
Yeah, that's Diddy's
and he's gonna have a song, and Kanye and him are planning.
Well, he'll steal someone else's song. If Suge Knight, I don't know if maybe it was one of those TMZ specials where Suge Knight was like, I feel really bad for Diddy. Like, he's gonna have all these songs that he's gonna have to take from other people, because basically what Diddy does. Diddy just shows up on people's songs.
Yeah, he has no original ideas. I mean, and look, hey, Suge Knight still hates him. Like, when he gets out, it's not like everything's going to be rosy, okay? Suge Knight still wants him. He still has a lot of enemies, and I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know. Are there any other trials in the pipeline that?
I don't think so. These were the big ones.
Yep.
Kohberger's the big one. Diddy, Karen Reed, Lori Vallow. There probably is one that I'm just not thinking of now, because I forgot about Diddy and Tyler the last time you asked me that. Diddy was ongoing. I'd forgotten about it. So you're like, what else are you following? Like, nothing. No, that's not true. Diddy. So yeah, I'm not sure. Kohberger's a big one I had on my radar for August, but
And what's August? August is the sentencing?
August was the when the trial was going to start, or jury selection, I guess.
Got it.
Yeah, jury selection would have started then.
Got
yeah.
it. Okay. Got it.
All right.
All
well,
right.
Thank you, Ashley, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Ashley very innocently emailed us and said, you know, if you ever want us to come on the show. And
now
and this poor woman, we're putting her to work. I know. Like constantly texting her.
I like talking to y'all.
Why did I say yes? Why did I offer this to these women?
Yeah. No. I like talking to you. Thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed it.
Well, we will see you again very soon, I'm sure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. You may be watching us on YouTube. We're on YouTube now. Hello. We're getting used to that. I always forget I'm on camera, and I'm like, I should probably be looking in the camera. Where do I look? But you can also find us on all the different social media platforms. If you want more extra content from us, we have a Patreon where we do weekly bonus episodes. You get these episodes ad-free. We do, for our higher tier, a couple other bonuses every month. And what we're doing now, we're still covering And Just Like That, if you're into that show. That comes out on Monday for the rest of the season. It's probably about halfway through. And on Thursdays, we have been talking about trials and true crime. Now we got to find something else to talk about. Yeah. Some of this Diddy stuff I'm sure will be ongoing, but it's not quite over yet. But this is what we do on Thursdays, and so check it out. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon. Bye.